All right, everyone. Steve Metrics here, Db8 Sports, and we are waiting on. Just want to change it up here, but our guy DJ TRIGGS is a little under the weather today, so a little bit different for our show on a Tuesday, but we're gonna do the best we can with it tonight. So main thing we're going over tonight. We're going over the Monday night games that occurred last night. We're going to look at a preview of the Week 4 games, and we'll go through some of these waiver pickups together. So that's how we're going to do it, and we're gonna make it work. So again, you can catch myself, and next week you'll have both myself and DJ TRIGGS here, 7 o'clock Central Time here, and you'll see us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. So that's where you'll see us here, and we'll make it happen. But here we go for tonight's show. So we're beginning with 2 games last night. So we had the Rams playing against the Bengals, and we had the Buccaneers playing against the Eagles. So let's start with that Buccaneers and Eagles game. So what you had there was you had a pretty tight game out of the gates. Tampa Bay definitely has a respectable defense. They have played well the first 2 weeks of the season. And then in this game, too, you definitely had a lot of weather going on as well. So it was pretty tight out of the get-go. But then Philadelphia started to figure out what they had to do. They kind of opened up in the secondary. Really nice pass to Quez Watkins later in that first half. And then pretty much later in the game, you just had DeAndre Swift with those really wide open holes that great offensive line opens up. Really take care of business. And if you look at Tampa Bay from the start of the season to now, they just haven't played against a running attack as elite as Philadelphia. So granted, they have been stingy against the run, but to date, they have not seen anything like what Philadelphia presents. So that definitely gives Philadelphia that edge in that matchup. So kind of what we had going on there. Another big takeaway from this is that when it comes to attacking Philadelphia's defense, the way you get at it is through the air and through the secondary. And granted, with yesterday's weather in Florida, it was pretty wet, humid, muggy, tough to really get anything going there. But still, you had some strong production out of Mike Evans, who's just been in an absolute tear this season. So that's how you're going to do it. When you have guys in fantasy playing up against Philadelphia, look for those receivers going up against Philadelphia Eagles. So there you go. And good stuff, Brett. Definitely welcome to the show. And we see you now. So I had a little bit of technical stuff to get the show going, but bam, we're here, we're rolling. So good stuff, Brett. So that's what we got going here. Then in the second game, we had the Rams against the Bengals. And pretty interesting here. And in this one, too, you had Joe Burrow come back pretty much fully healthy for what we could see. But when you really check out that stat line, it's not the greatest. It still seems like he's kind of figuring things out. And if you look at it, how Cincinnati operated that offense, they operated Jamar Chase in multiple positions. So they ran him outside for about 2/3 of the time, and about 1/3 of the time, they brought him into the slot. So you bring him into the slot, you give Joe Burrow a little bit easier opportunities to make some different throws. Plus, you give Jamar Chase some looks against defenders that aren't used to seeing it. Your nickel corners aren't used to seeing Jamar Chase. He's more than often totally outside, and that's why you have Tyler Boyd working the slot. So that's kind of how that offense works. But what my theory has always been about the Bengals, granted, it hasn't been a great start now, but should they actually get ahead in games, they're a team that is pretty stout outside, but yet they seem to have that ability to be attacked in the middle of the field, and they can be run on really well. So pretty much the last 2 weeks, teams have been able to run against the Bengals for about 250 yards. In this game, the Rams totally abandoned it. Kyron Williams only had 10 carries, and they really just stuck to throwing the ball outside. So the two worst possibilities you could do against the Bengals is exactly what the Rams stuck to. So it's like that Mike Tyson saying that everyone's got a plan until you get punched in the face. And the Rams totally did that. They abandoned their plan altogether. You have Kyron Williams, who's a phenomenal running back to start this season. Could have definitely done the things against the Bengals, but didn't. And then you look at how they passed, and their only touchdown came from Tutu Atwell in the slot. So there was a nice play from Puka Nacua later in that game. You did have one big deep pass to Van Jefferson, but that's about it outside. Other than that, the Bengals did a really good job at preventing plays from those outside receivers. But when it comes to inside, that's where they can absolutely be attacked. And Tutu Atwell and Tyler Higbee absolutely did that. So when it comes to teams, when it comes to fantasy football against the Bengals, that's how you attack the Bengals. You beat them with running backs and you beat them inside with receivers and tight ends. That's how you're going to do it. But with the Rams, completely abandoned it. They didn't know the game plan, and it showed. That's why this game was tight. And I see in future matchups, teams are definitely going to start understanding that. And I still don't think Cincinnati's going to make it work unless Joe Burrow is really healthy. And we're talking like 400, 300 plus yards a game out of him. Because if you think about it, if Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, if they really figure it out, then they're going to get far ahead. Teams are going to shell up. They're going to try to throw outside, which isn't going to work. And then if you do try to really run the ball against Cincinnati, well, hopefully it works. But if it doesn't, you're going to be trailing. And then if you are trailing, it's even harder to run the football. So that's how things are going to work in the favor or work against the Cincinnati Bengals. So you had that there. And you also had with the Rams, you just had terrible pass protection and terrible run blocking as well. So you had like 10 hits on Matthew Stafford. You had 6 sacks on Matthew Stafford, and you had about 7 tackles for loss on him as well. So just a big bruising day for that offensive line. If you look at it, that means basically Matt Stafford was basically taking a hit of some kind, whether it's a sack or a hit, on about a third of all passing plays that he attempted. So pretty rough day out of him. And for that offense to keep going, they need him upright. They need that production from the receiving cores, and they just got to be able to run that ball as well with Kyron Williams. So kind of a bend don't break offense. Never thought I'd be saying that, but it is what it is. So that's what we got there. That's what we got from these guys. And let's look at these matchups going forward. So if we look at the very start of week 4, our first game of the week is going to be the Lions and the Packers. So when it comes to the Packers, we've definitely seen that this is a team that definitely likes to run the ball. They really like their production from Romeo Doubs. They like their production from inside, whether it's Jaden Reed or Luke Musgraves. And they're going up against the Lions. And this game is in Lambeau Field. It's at night at Lambeau, Thursday night football. So some interesting things. A big thing we definitely noticed from the Lions, especially last week against Atlanta, that's a very run-heavy team, and they completely shut down the run. So when it came to Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier, they did absolutely nothing. And my feeling is if the Green Bay offense can't really run the ball, then that's going to force Jordan Love to make more throws and possibly more bad decisions. We've been seeing throughout the season, Jordan Love's completion percentage is somewhere close to 50%. So when that happens, you're probably going to end up making more mistakes than you're more comfortable doing. So you have that going on. On the flip side of that, you got the Lions against Green Bay. So you have Jair Alexander out there. He's probably going to shut down your number one receiver. Is he going to shut down Amon-Ra St. Brown? I don't know. We'll see. I mean, you look at how they played against New Orleans last week. There wasn't much out of Michael Thomas. Seemed like Chris Olave did a lot, but Rashid Shaheed had no production whatsoever. So was that the game plan of of Green Bay to look at New Orleans and say, hey, Rashid Shaheed's kind of their guy. Let's deal with him. But then again, you have the Derek Carr injury. So you have that stuff going on as well. But my feeling is that Detroit has a way to really kind of be a monkey wrench in the cog for the Green Bay offense, yet they present their own problems to Green Bay. So they have Jahmyr Gibbs, who is a very, very flexible kind of player. And then you have Sam Laporta playing as well. So I think this will be a game that Green Bay is not really used to. And it's a team that can match up well against them. So I do like Detroit in this game, and I do like the options that you can get with Sam Laporta, that you can get with Jahmyr Gibbs, and I do not like certain targets of Green Bay, and then definitely that run game of Green Bay. I think especially not having Aaron Jones back, or if he does come back, it's going to be limited. So that's where I think Detroit really is going to thrive. They're going to stop the run against Green Bay. So that's what we got there. I'm taking the Lions week 1. And we'll take from that. So let's go ahead and check out the next game. Ooh, hey there. So we got a comment from James that did Jair Alexander play this week. I thought I heard he was hurt. You know what, James? Let's take a look at that. So let's see what happened in that week 3 game with the New Orleans Saints and see what all happened there. So I'm going to pull up that game right now, check out that box score, and let's see what we got. So we're going to be going down to the defensive stats of things. And wait, that is not the defense. That is, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, it is. All right. So yeah, you know what, James? You are spot on. There's no Jair Alexander in this whatsoever. So looks like he was still fighting injury, and yeah, didn't really play against the Saints. So that speaks volumes of Green Bay's defense to do what they did. Chris Olave had his day, Mike Thomas had his day, and that's kind of how it went. But then again, that New Orleans offense kind of fell off when Carr got hurt. So I do think that getting Jair back this week would be huge. Not 100% sure if that's how it's going to happen. What I can take a look at is that injury report of Green Bay Packers. So let's see what we got with that. And let's pull that up here. So real good tool I like is ESPN's NFL injury status. If you use it for basketball or whatever the sport is, it's actually really, really good. It's really up to date. Shows you the top players to get hurt at the very top, and then it works its way back from the moment that those injuries occurred. So looks like something I'm seeing here on the side already is Aaron Jones is coming back and Christian Watson's coming back. So that's really big. The problem with that is they are both coming back from hamstring issues. So when it comes to that, it's not going to be much. Already looking at the Denver Broncos side of things when it comes to receivers, you had Jerry Jeudy come back from his hamstring injury and did very little whatsoever. So hamstrings take time. They take time to work back in, and it's not going to happen in the first week. Maybe that second or third week, that's when things can really take off and come back to normal. So that's kind of how we got that going there. But excuse me. Let's take a look and see what's going on with those Green Bay Packers. So, getting there. Okay, I'm at the Houston Texans. So cool, we're pretty close. All right, Jair Alexander. So, looks like he was a limited participant during the team's practice on Tuesday today. And he is currently listed as questionable. So, that's a back injury. So that is a tough one. That's one that can either flare up or whatever, but I would think that is something that you don't really want to mess around too much with. And especially if you're Jair, it's not going to allow you to go at 100%. So if that's the case, and you have a shifty guy in like Amon-Ra St. Brown, Amon-Ra St. Brown's going to run some beautiful routes. So I don't think you can have Jair really shadowing him if that's who he's playing against. And we've seen too, like if Jair is playing and he's kind of banged up, it's not the greatest. But if Jair is healthy, that guy can absolutely lock down a receiver. So I like Jair possibly playing outside. If he does play, that would mean either Josh Reynolds or Kyron Williams is probably not going to do much if that's the case. But otherwise, I mean, I still think Monroe St. Brown takes care of business. I think Samuel Laporta takes care of business as well, should they get to the goal line. But Laporta had a really nice deep pass against the Falcons on Sunday. So it'll be kind of interesting to see how they use them. But yeah, it's still a lot of guys coming back from injury. But for that, I'm sticking with Detroit. So yeah, so that's kind of what we got going on there. And let's just work our way through all these games. So yeah, this will be a tough one for me to swallow, but yeah, got to do it. I have not seen any good football from my Raiders at all this season. They are 1-2. They should be 0-3, in all honesty, against the Chargers, who are finally 1-2. But the Chargers should be 3-0, in all honesty. So I think that matchup really comes to fruition this week. And I would absolutely go with the Chargers. Big thing here is Mike Williams tore his ACL, but we still know that Chargers receiving core is still fairly deep. So you know that something is going to happen at some point in the season between Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, and that's why they invested a high draft pick to Quentin Johnson. So Quentin Johnson's in this game, lined up outside. You got Keenan Allen just tearing it up in the slot this season. He's already at over 400 yards in 3 games, 2 touchdowns, absolutely massive this season. Big steal, especially in our draft. I know he went late. I want to say it was like round 4, round 5 in a 16-team draft. So really impressed with what's going on there. We'll see if that run game does more with Austin Eckler. So again, let's go back to that injury chart and let's see what's going on with the Chargers, because that run game has absolutely not existed since Austin Eckler went out after week 1. So currently he's just listed as questionable, and there is no description about his injury whatsoever right now from ESPN. So that's kind of interesting going on there. But if this is a team that has to go hard with the pass, they will. So, all right. So what do we got here? James, I wonder who the smart guy was that drafted Keenan Allen. That might be you, pal. Not exactly totally up to date with every team in our league, but if so, that's a heck of a pick. Yeah, so I like it. That is pretty cool. If that's how that shaped up, that's pretty interesting. So got that going on there. But yeah, that's pretty much the main thing, is that just looking at the Raiders, just really bad things going on defensively, like totally blown coverages, very bad schemes from the defense in very opportunistic defensive positions. And then the offense really struggles. It's exactly kind of what we saw last year from Derek Carr. So you start the game fairly hot, probably lead off with a touchdown, and then everything falls flat. Don't know why, but it's probably the way Josh McDaniels calls the game, and it just falls flat. The only way that I see this changing is if Aiden O'Connell starts and you really just unleash everything and give him the reins, give him the keys to the castle. If it doesn't go well, so be it. But you need to at least see what you got and see if there's any hope with this. So, I mean, I want to see this offense thrive, but it really sucks if the best quarterback you have is listed as number 3 on the depth chart and you have no possibility of improving. But between Hoyer and Garoppolo, there's really no difference, even actually between the two of them and Derek Carr. So yeah, all 3 of them, they all have times where they panic and get flustered. And that leads to interceptions, that leads to turnovers, that leads to a loss in time of possession, puts the defense out there more. And all of this is what I see going on with the Chargers. And that's the thing. The only saving grace of that is LA cannot play defense whatsoever. There's no defense on that team. That's why they go in shootouts. That's why they've lost 2 of their 3 games, almost lost against the Vikings as well. and it is what it is. So you can absolutely throw on these guys. But that's the case. If they put the young guy out there, give him some confidence. This is a good matchup that if you have a young, inexperienced quarterback, have him go in against a team that struggles defensively against the air. It would be perfect against LA, especially in a game that we might have to be in a shootout for. So that's kind of the way it is. I mean, if you're betting, maybe bet the over of this game, especially if Aiden O'Connell is in the game. But other than that, if you're just betting it straight up and it is a Brian Hoyer or Jimmy Garoppolo, then absolutely just hammer the Chargers. Maybe take those points and just slide them as far to LA as you can. So that's kind of how we're looking with that. Yeah, and James, you're spot on, man. Josh Jacobs has definitely lost his bona fide status. I mean, I think the run game of the run blocking of the Raiders is totally coming to fruition. That it is not a good run blocking offensive line. I want to say there was a guy like 72 that he's a big man, like big guy, but he kind of like goes around out there with like T-Rex arms. It's like he couldn't move his arms to block guys. And that happened for the run blocking, happened for the pass protection. Just a terrible player on the offensive line that should not be out there. So yeah, that's number 72. I want to say he is a right guard, not the tackle, but the guard. But yeah, really bad play there. So it is what it is, and it sucks. So but that's what we got going with that game. So we kind of know what the direction is, and we got a good feeling for how that game can shape up. So let's go to our next game. Next game is in London for us here in the Midwest. This is a real early game. This is 8:30 in the morning. So we'll see what goes on here. But you have Trevor Lawrence, who's playing some really good football offensively. But like, man, there's just something going wrong here. And I still feel it comes back to the pass protection and the offensive line. You are getting more Tank Tank Bigsby. Mix up the two tanks, but if you have the two tanks, gold, man, like those guys are awesome. And I think that is also James as well in our league. So even more kudos to that. So pretty cool stuff there. But like pretty much the script of this is with Atlanta, you still have Desmond Ridder managing games, and you still have Bijan Robinson pretty much is the forefront of that offense, and he's a rookie. So you wonder how long can this go? Do the tires and the wheels actually fall off at some point? Is there going to be more Tyler Algier? We don't know exactly what this offense looks like, especially with Cordero Patterson. So that's another piece to lighten the load. And if you have a Tyler Algier, if you have a Bijan Robinson, you might want to be on the lookout for that. So let's take a look at that already for the Atlanta offense and their injuries. So we have Cordero Patterson, again, listed as questionable and nothing else out of that. So really nothing going on there. Kind of interesting. I'll see if I can click his name, see if there's anything going on with this guy whatsoever. But I do feel like they have to bring him in. They do have to open up that offense, especially with more of a pass catching back that Cordero is. So, yeah, again, just everything's listed as questionable with him. Checking out that latest news, and we'll see if we got anything here. So, yeah, so looks like that's a leg injury, like a thigh injury against the Lions. So pretty much a healthy scratch for week 2. Yeah, and same thing, missing week 3 of the preseason. So that's pretty much where he is right now. So I still think this is a guy that comes back and really adds that added dimension to that offense. And plus, then you have the travel. You have the whole logistics of this going on in going on in London against Jacksonville. So with that, I would feel pretty comfortable with the Jaguars doing this. So what do we got here? Okay, we got from James. He hasn't started either of the tanks yet. Yeah, so I know you are considering benching Jacobs for other players. I did notice. I remember too. You had DeAndre Swift. That was a pretty interesting scratch as well, but a really dynamic player for your team. But like if we look at the Chargers are a team that played against the Miami Dolphins. We know how that ended up. That's a real shootout. Then they have played against Minnesota, which doesn't have much of a running game. And then we also look at the Chargers, and they have played against the Titans. And the Titans ran really, really well against them with Derrick Henry. So that's kind of interesting. Yeah, it's kind of weird. Like this might actually be a bounce back game for Josh Jacobs, looking at the LA Chargers and how you attack that offense. So totally doable. Definitely a possibility that you got to kick around with Jacobs for your team this week. So that's kind of what you got going on there. But yeah, going back to our Falcons Jaguars game, we'll see. I mean, we'll see if there's going to be more production out of that Jaguars offense. We look at Atlanta, especially how they played against Detroit last week. Atlanta has really, really good corners in the secondary outside. So when it came to those receivers for Detroit, they really didn't do much of anything. All of Detroit's damage in the air was in the slot. So that came from Amon-Ra St. Brown, that came from Sam Laporta. When you look at Jacksonville, they have so many other ways that they can attack you. This is really a big Evan Ingram game, probably a big Christian Kirk game, probably a possible big Travis Etienne game as well. So you bring more of those dynamic pieces in the middle and from the backfield and bring them up. Maybe this isn't a good game for you, James, to start Tank Bigsby because they're probably, I mean, but then again, it could be too, because if they dink and doink their way down the field, then they get to the goal line and then they say, Tank, take it home, man. That could be the way they go at things. Maybe it's even both. Maybe both Travis Etienne and Tank Bigsby get it done. But for the people out there who have a Christian Kirk, who have a Evan Ingram, this is probably your game. So if you're the other side of that coin and you have the Zay Jones or the Calvin Ridley, this might not be a good game for those guys because of how stout Atlanta is against the guys outside. So you know they're going to be focused on Calvin Ridley. You know they're going to have a safety focused somewhat on Zay Jones because of the speed Zay Jones brings. So it's kind of what you got going on. But yeah, you're spot on, James. That Tank doesn't get those yards. It's pretty much just the goal line touches that he can get. So that's kind of what you got going on there. But pretty interesting stuff. But that's kind of the way I see this game going on between the Falcons and the Jaguars is Jacksonville comes back, but the way they're going to come back is through the slot and through Travis Etienne. So, yeah, and there you go. And way to go, James. At least you started DeAndre Swift in the monsoon in Tampa. So that works. Yeah, this might be a way, too, that when you're looking at playing guys against Tampa Bay, attack them up the middle. If you're a team that can run the ball well, has a good offensive line, maybe that's how you attack Tampa and you just run it right through them. So you saw that. It was a little tough throwing the ball against Tampa. You started to see that A.J. Brown stuff last week, or yesterday. So it is what it is. But definitely something we want to keep in the back of our mind is run the ball against Tampa when you do have a good run blocking scheme. And it's kind of ironic because Todd Bowles is usually really stout against the run. But this go around, he seems more stout against the secondary, against the pass. So kind of a flip of direction for a Todd Bowles defense from what we saw in Arizona with the Jets and with the Buccaneers during the Tom Brady years. So things that are kind of flipping around for how he works that defense, but still a solid team, still solid defense. The offense is working its way with Baker Mayfield. He looks pretty good and good stuff there. So that's what we got. All right, so let's go to the next game here. Yeah, this is probably my favorite game. Definitely want to see the Dolphins take care of business against Buffalo. And this is pretty wild here. Already just looking at the game preview of this. Through 3 games, Tua Tagovailoa is already over 1,000 yards. 8 total touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Just really, really wild stats there. And the way they just absolutely torched Denver. The biggest thing that I know in this is that in all three games that the Miami Dolphins played last season against the Buffalo Bills, is that they were a hard matchup. I do want to say at every point of those three games, Miami was leading or tied at some point in every single one of those games. And Miami's team now is even better. They are probably the best team in the NFL right now, between the way they can just torch points on the opposing team, and they have a very solid defense. And yeah, I mean, even before these games took off, looking at Pro Football Focus and how they had teams ranked overall through those two games, and even the Thursday night game of the Niners, they had San Francisco and Miami ranked 1 and 2. So pretty interesting. That has definitely been a Super Bowl pick I've seen kind of floated around before the season started, and it is probably going to come to fruition. Just the way things are kind of shaking up. But I feel this is definitely the game where Buffalo totally gets exposed. We really have not seen that great of play out of Josh Allen this season. And that's where I think that Miami is going to show that. Their defense is solid. The way they attack an opposing defense, a defense in Buffalo that we know has taken somewhat of a step back. Granted, last week, sure, but it's Sam Howell. Let's be honest, that's really a rookie quarterback. And that's how you won the game. You won the game from the mistakes that Sam Howell made. So this is a team that focuses more on the run, focuses more on the opportunistic plays for Tua Tagovailoa. They're going to take care of business. So that's what I like there, and we'll see what happens. But yeah, I mean, like looking at Washington, there really wasn't much production going on there. Going back 2 weeks, that would have been against the Raiders. You pretty much had one big play out of Devontae Adams, and that was pretty much it. And then week 1, that would have been Buffalo against the Jets. So the Jets really shut down things outside, and they allowed for things inside. And actually, when Buffalo played Dallas, CeeDee Lamb really started to get things going. So I do want to say, too, against Miami that they kind of are better against the outside players than the inside players. So if Buffalo is going to have success, it probably won't be as much from Diggs and Gabe Davis. It's probably going to be more like Dawson Knox, Dalton Kincaid, James Cook, that kind of style, where you have a team that wants to run the ball and play inside. But if you can't keep up with the points of Miami, that game plan kind of gets scrapped. So that's where it gets dicey. That's where it gets a little weird in this matchup. So this could be a game too that if you're a Josh Allen owner, you might be a little tough in this one, considering how Miami's going to play it and how the game is going to unfold as it happens. So for that, I'm definitely taking the Dolphins. They were my AFC East prediction with your boy DJ Triggs when we had our picks at the start of the season. So yeah, that's what's going on there. And I do like Miami quite a bit. And we'll see how far they go. So we got that, and let's go to the next game. And boy, this could be a real tough one. I think this is the matchup a lot of people dread, but not me. Like, I believe there are good things going on with this team, and and that is the Broncos and the Bears. And it's kind of interesting. I mean, I'm already looking at this, and I'm seeing Russell Wilson and his stats. It's pretty interesting. The guy has more yards thrown, more than Joe Burrow, Deshaun Watson, less than Tua Tagovailoa, and more than Trevor Lawrence. And pretty much almost right on point with Jared Goff and Trevor Lawrence as well. So that's kind of where he's positioned there. But so you have that Broncos offense, which we've noticed pretty much works out of the slot. They like Jerry Jeudy a lot. Then they do like Cortland Sutton. And then you do get some big passes out of Menzel Mims. So that's how it works. They didn't really run the ball that much last week. But I think against Chicago, you can clearly run the ball against that team. And you can definitely have your way with their entire secondary. So I think everything is going to go in the direction of Denver. They've played a lot of tough teams to start the year. It's kind of unfortunate the way things have gone for them, but I do think Denver is probably one of the better 0-3 teams, or they're probably even better than some of these 1-2 teams that are out there as well. And I think this is absolutely a week where they can showcase that. And again, too, like Denver basically hasn't really missed a beat from the defensive side of the ball. So, like, you had Vance Joseph there, you had Vic Fangio there as well, and those pieces are still in place. So now you have Vance Joseph back after he left as DC, went as head coach in Arizona. Now he's back as a DC again in Denver. So kind of cool seeing how things go with that. And I think they'll take care of business against Chicago, who's man, they got a world of hurt. They got a lot of weird things going on, and yeah, it kind of sucks. So that's what we got there. Speaking of running the ball, the next matchup I'm looking at is Baltimore and Cleveland. And there has been zilch success running against Cleveland. Combined, whether it's Joe Mixon, Najee Harris, Jalen Warren, Derrick Henry, or Tajay Spears, all 5 of them have combined for only 160 yards in 3 games and no touchdowns, not a single score from any of those guys. So it is incredibly hard to run the ball against Cleveland. And Baltimore, that is their MO. Like, they know they don't have J.K. Dobbins. They have Justice Hill. There was some good Melvin Gordon production in there as well. They have Gus Edwards. I kind of like Melvin Gordon a little bit more, especially being from Wisconsin. But seeing the way that Melvin Gordon can actually open up like the backfield as well, he's pretty good at catching passes as well. He does have those fumble issues, but I don't know. I feel like that's something that you can. It's very rare that you see a guy get benched for it, but it happens, and it can halt guys. It can stunt their careers in a very negative way, and that's what I see going on with Melvin Gordon. Yes, he was beat out by Austin Eckler back in the day with the Chargers, but that happened. I mean, Eckler would have beaten out a lot of running backs to be the starter in LA, and Eckler has been easily one of the handful best running backs in the entire NFL. So I'm not going to put all that against Melvin Gordon. Things didn't work that well with Denver. Went to Kansas City. It is what it is. But I think that's what they need to use more of. And I think they need to use more of Zay Flowers in this game as well. He runs a lot of routes and does pretty well. So that's kind of what we got going on there. But yeah, so I like Cleveland in this. I like their ability to stop the run. It was shocking to see Indianapolis pass as well as they did against the Ravens. So that's a real tough one going on there. And I think that's all in all, it's going to stunt the way that Ravens offense wants to operate. And with this being an in-division matchup, a team that kind of knows you kind of well, I like the Browns' ability to move forward in this game. So I like the way they've played. I've liked the fact that the one game that they lost against Pittsburgh was because Pittsburgh had more defensive turnovers and more defensive scores. Other than that, looking at the offensive side of the ball, Cleveland did have more points than Pittsburgh. So this is a team that could easily be 3-0, that is 2-1 going up against the Ravens. So I think this week they continue that and they go 3-1. So there you go. And then looking at from our team that played yesterday, the Bengals against the Titans. So again, we laid out that script of how to beat the Bengals. Beat them inside, beat them with the run game. That's probably the best features we can actually talk about with the Titans. They do have a stingy kind of defense, but the Titans, we know they can run the ball with Derrick Henry and Tajay Spears. And then we know their slot game. Granted, honestly, maybe put DeAndre Hopkins out there. I've always theorized that DeAndre Hopkins should be more of a slot player. He runs a lot of excellent routes, and he can make that happen. So I like this matchup a lot, and I like the fact that the Bengals are a team that the Titans have played against, and they had things go poorly and kind of derail them. So this is a game that I think is a big motivating game for the Titans, and I like the matchup here. So I like Tennessee actually sticking to the script that the Rams avoided, and I like them getting that getting it done. So that's how I'm seeing this. I know the Bengals have some things going well for them, but still, that offense does look a little wonky with how Joe Burrow operates. So that's what we got going on there. I will take the Titans on that. And then our next game, the Rams and the Colts. Again, another team from yesterday. So what we had with the Colts is we had no Anthony Richardson last week, and we had Gardner Minshew, and Minshew got it done. So pretty impressive there. We know that defense of Indianapolis can be oppressive. They did it to Trevor Lawrence, and the Bengals absolutely got to Matt Stafford and that run game of the Rams. So I think the Colts got something working for them now. Even Zach Moss is running the ball really well. We saw Joe Mixon have success against the Rams yesterday. So I like what's going on with the Colts. So for that, I'm taking them over the Rams. I think this is a tougher matchup than people think, and the Colts could really end up being a team that's better than what people think. So whether it's Anthony Richardson or Gardner Minshew, this offense is starting to figure itself out. So, and their only loss is actually against the Texans, who have been playing really good football to start this season. So I think the Colts are going to probably end up being one of those really surprise teams out of the South this season. So might be that the South has maybe 2 or 3 teams that find their way into the playoffs. Could be interesting. I think it's really going to be a tight one between the Colts, Texans, and Jaguars now that we look at it and see how games are shaping up. So kind of interesting there. Next game we're looking at is Tampa Bay and the Saints. So we saw Buccaneers play yesterday. We saw how that team operates. Now they don't have to deal with the weather conditions, and they go to New Orleans indoors. And I think the big takeaway that I see with this is that you can run the ball against Tampa. And what's going on with the Saints? This will be the first game back for Alvin Kamara. And I have noticed that outside the Packer game, that this is a team that kind of has a good run blocking scheme going for them. So I like what's going on with the Saints here. I like them getting back Alvin Kamara. I don't think they have Derek Carr. They're going to work with Jameis Winston, but you have a plan going into the game. You know what to expect with Jameis Winston, and you're getting that added bonus of an Alvin Kamara. So bringing those surprise elements to this game at home against Tampa, I do like that a lot, and I will actually go with the Saints. To win this game. And then with the Saints side of this, this is going to be one of those big time rivalry games, and we know how this matchup goes. It's a very testy, hot-headed, fiery temper game where we've seen Mike Evans get ejected, we've seen Marshawn Lattimore get ejected, and that's how it's going to go. They will be covering each other throughout this game. So this is a game too that you could get tight coverage from Lattimore on Evans and it holds up, or Mike Evans loses his cool, gets ejected like he did a year or so ago, and then he's out of the game completely. So I think this is a revenge game for Marshawn Lattimore. I think he gets it done. On top of that, being able to run the ball, keep Mike Evans off the field. I see things going really well for the Saints. So I like that, and that's how I think they attack this game. Possibly Rachaad White is interesting as well. So the Packers didn't really have that option of an Aaron Jones against the Saints. Possibly if you bring in a Rachaad White against the Saints, maybe that helps out. Maybe that kind of works that middle of the field. So maybe the Buccaneers are looking at more of a Chris Godwin kind of style, maybe using Kate Otten a little bit more. If you have a Lattimore outside who doesn't really shadow, he sticks to his space and he locks it down for whoever he's up against. So perhaps that's the way that Tampa is going to look at this. Utilize more Chris Godwin and utilize more Rachaad White and then maybe a little Cade Otton here and there, especially at the goal line. So that's kind of the game plan I see Tampa Bay, but I think it's just too little, too late, not enough volume going on with that offense. So for that, I like the Saints. That's kind of how we got that going. So let's see what we got going on here. And let's go to the next game, another Monday night team with the Eagles against the Commanders. So the biggest thing that I've taken away from Commanders games, especially their defense, is they shut down the tight end. They will absolutely shut down the tight end position. So Dallas Goedert, probably not going to do much. But when you do that, you open up the outside. And we know Philadelphia loves the outside of their receiving core with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. So that's how they're going to do it. You can run the ball against the Commanders as well. Just seeing how DeAndre Swift did last week, I see him doing pretty much the similar game plan they just did against Tampa Bay. Run the ball well, probably play a little tight to begin with, get some opportunities, whether it's a Quez Watkins or who is listed as a slot, but let's be honest, he's really a go route kind of a guy that stretches a defense. And then you have the route runners of the A.J. Browns and the Devontae Smiths of the world doing their thing outside. So I think that's really what goes on here. And ultimately, I definitely see the Eagles coming away with this game. So you got that. We know their run game is one of the best to not run against. And that's probably what the Commanders want. They want to have a Bijan Robinson production. But then they are going to throw the ball. So Philly's Achilles heel is the secondary. So you're probably going to see a big Terry McLaurin game, maybe a Jahan Dotson game in this as well. So that's kind of what we're looking at. Not too sure how the tight end position is. Probably not too much. But then again, TJ Hawkinson had a good game too. But then again, too, like Logan Thomas coming off an injury. So kind of interesting. Like maybe you take a flyer on the Commanders tight end if you can get him. If there is no Logan Thomas there. So kind of a way to look at this game. But ultimately, I still think this is an Eagles game. Maybe the Commanders kind of score a few points in garbage time, but I think the Eagles ultimately come away with this one. So that's kind of what I see going on there. And then next game, speaking of that Eagles opponent from a week or so ago, the Minnesota Vikings. We got the Vikings against the Panthers. And for me, this comes down to who the Panthers quarterback is. Is it a Bryce Young? Is it an Andy Dalton? And just already looking at these injuries of who's going on here. So if I take a look at that and go to Carolina and see what's going on here. So we got a Bryce Young listed as questionable. It's kind of the theme of the night. Kind of ironic that these guys that we have the biggest question marks about, they're listed as questionable and there's no description about them whatsoever. So kind of mysterious, but the takeaway that I take from Sunday is that when Andy Dalton is out there, he truly is the better quarterback. He proved that he was still a strong quarterback when he was with the Saints last season, and he's doing it again with the Carolina Panthers. He does have that mobility factor as well. To me, I think he is more mobile than a Bryce Young, and he's just more confident, more polished, just a better thrower. Already has that chemistry with Adam Thielen. So I like that. But looking at who they're up against, and that is the Minnesota Vikings, it's kind of weird. Like Minnesota scores a ton of points, but they don't play any defense whatsoever. But the Panthers do kind of play a defense. They did play well against the Saints. They didn't do as well against Seattle, but they can play a defense at times. So I feel like if this game does have an Andy Dalton starting, I like the Panthers. If it's Bryce Young, I like the Vikings, especially with a Brian Flores who's going to work a creative defense against a young rookie in Bryce Young. Then that could really be a whole can of worm problems for Bryce. So we'll see what happens there. But I picked this matchup based upon the quarterback that's playing. I do kind of like what they got going on with Andy Dalton. So I'm just going to say right now, I'm going to take the Panthers And I'm basing this all entirely on Andy Dalton. So I like him for this matchup, but that's the only reason is that the Panthers can actually play a defense where the Vikings really do not. So that's what you got going there. All right. So the next game we're looking at is the Steelers against. Wait a minute. Am I still in week 3? Just got to check this out. Yeah. We're still in week 3 here. So, we have the Steelers and the Texans. So, had a pretty good game out of the Steelers this past Sunday night against my Raiders, and but even better was the game out of the Texans against the Jaguars. So Texans have had some tough games. They've played Jacksonville, they've played Indianapolis, and I'm kind of blanking on the third matchup that they had. Not totally sure who that was. But just a big upset win against Jacksonville, and pretty interesting with that team. And again, you have CJ Stroud throwing for basically another 300-yard game. So he's for the season he's at 906 yards, basically 300 for the year, 4 touchdowns against a Steelers team that I don't know, like there's things working for them. They still have questions running the football. Holding up Jacksonville as well as they did, I would expect those issues to continue and that they will have to throw the ball. They're going to have to use more of a Kenny Pickens, more of a Pat Freiermuth. I don't remember off the top of my head the Texans way they performed against Evan Ingram. But that's something I would look at. I would look at how the Texans did against the slot, against Evan Ingram, against Christian Kirk, kind of see how that goes and really gauge that matchup off of it. This is a tough one. I do like the momentum that's going on with the Steelers. I know the Texans just had a really high energy kind of win against an in-division opponent. And sometimes when you see that in football, you see that luster kind of shine off the next week because you have so much intensity going into that previous week's game. That'll be the one reason why I'm going to pick the Steelers. I will pick the Steelers to continue playing dominant defense. You have 2 dominant-ish defenses going in this game. But again, too, you have that weapon in Tank Dell and the Texans. So that's pretty cool there. But at some point, I think someone's going to show some resistance against CJ Stroud. And I think the Steelers can do that. I think they can absolutely do that, especially having TJ Watt in this game as well. So for that, I'm going to take the Steelers. And if they can at all figure out that run game, that's the nail in the coffin. That's that dagger or whatever it is that helps you cross that finish line. So I like the options that you can get out of the Steelers this week. Raiders, Chargers, you guys already know my feelings about that game. And all right, so we got 3 final games here to cover. They're all kind of straightforward. But let's start with the one that's kind of probably a little closer than you'd think. And that is the Patriots going on the road to the Dallas Cowboys. So the big thing that we've noticed here is that the Cowboys losing Trayvon Diggs, I think, has a massive impact on this entire team. Because when you have him out, now you have more opportunities outside for teams to have production. And then if that's the case, they're also going to have more ability to score points. So if they're doing that, and we already saw James Conner and this run game of the Cardinals run right through the Cowboys. So that's even more concerning going on with that defense of Dallas. And that's always been the thing that I've kept in the back of my mind with the Cowboys is if they have to get more aggressive on offense, then that can have detrimental effects to the defense and to a Dak Prescott who's going to have to force more balls and put more of the weight of that offense on his shoulders. Whereas if you have a stout defense, you can kind of dink and doink and utilize Tony Pollard to the fullest. And we also know that week 1, the Patriots played, I want to say the Minnesota Vikings, if I'm right. But whoever they played against was a matchup that allowed the Patriots to really throw the ball all over the field. Actually, no, my bad. Philadelphia. So Philadelphia was a team that they definitely had problems running against, but they really opened it up outside. And I kind of see that kind of matchup playing out again with Dallas. So you're probably going to get maybe more Devontae Parker. You got Juju Smith in the slot, and then you have blanking on the guy's name, real big time receiver for the Patriots. But you have him out there as well. And I think this is a game that Mac Jones can get more confidence and get more production, especially if maybe you have to be concerned with how Micah Parsons is in the middle of the field and how that defense is going to probably try to stop the run. But then again, too, later in your game, if you're ahead, now you can hammer Ezekiel Elliott. Oh, excuse me. That's another thing going on with this game. This is kind of a revenge game for Zeke. And we already saw last week they were already split in carries between Ramondre Stevenson and Zeke Elliott. So if you are a Zeke owner, this is probably a good matchup, I'm thinking, because I do think they're going to get to the goal line more often than not, and they will figure out a way to get Zeke the ball and get him that added motivation. And when guys have that added motivation, it shows. So it shows up in almost every single game where you have an impactful player like that on offense. So Zeke is that guy. But more importantly, that secondary of Dallas is really in shambles without Trayvon Diggs. And we know Stephon Gilmore is already a step back of Trayvon. But if now Stephon Gilmore is your number one and your number two is really a number three, you can definitely hit that defense hard outside. So I like Bill O'Brien and Mac Jones making that happen this week. So for that, absolutely going with the Patriots against Dallas. So that's what we're going there. Let me take a look and see if we got any questions out there. Nope. All right, we got 2 games left, and then we're going to take a look at some waiver pickups. We're going to do them together. It's been kind of a weird week for waiver pickups. I haven't really looked at it, and we'll see what happens, but we'll do that together. So cool stuff here. So second to last game, we got the Cardinals against the Niners. I think this is where the Cardinals come back to earth. Granted, it was a very opportunistic situation against Dallas last week. The 49ers are not an opportunistic kind of a team to play against. This is the heavy favorite to at least make a play to the NFC Championship game, probably against Philadelphia. So for that, I like San Francisco. They're probably already regarded as one of the 2 best teams in the entire NFL. So real easy here. Take the 49ers. But then again, too, I mean, Arizona's been doing this. They've been performing somewhat well in these games because of their offensive line. They have great run blocking. They have great pass protection. But this is the week where it's gonna show what it truly is worth against a tough defense like a Trayvon Armstead that presents with the 49ers. So really, really tough stuff going on there. And we'll see what happens. But yeah, I like the 49ers in this one. Not sure offensively how they're going to attack against Arizona. We do know that there was really solid production out of Tony Pollard. So this might be a game where you see more just Christian McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel pretty much doing more of the work. And there was there any tight end production out of Dallas? I don't think so. I think there was just CeeDee Lamb, I want to say. So it is kind of what it is there, but that's kind of what I see about San Francisco is pretty much they're going to go heavy on the run. Maybe not as much Brock Purdy going on here, but really attack it hard with Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, maybe even Elijah Mitchell gets involved there. And then the nightcap just finishes the week. Actually, no, second to last game. Looks like I got a third game here. Yep. So nightcap Sunday, Chiefs Jets. It's going to be the Chiefs. It's going to be like they basically just played the same matchup last week against Chicago. Has no offense, and when you have no offense, you put that defense on the field again and again and again, and it just makes them look worse than what they really are. And that's going to happen here with the Jets. So a team that can't throw the ball, can't run the ball, has no respect whatsoever, is identical to the Bears. They are almost like the Bears, except the Jets actually have a good defense, but they're just on the field all the time. So that's what you got there. Probably again another good Travis Kelce day, with the fact that the Jets do have great corners outside, and you can probably attack them inside as well. So probably looking at Travis Kelce and Sky Moore in this matchup, as well as some combination of how they want to run the ball with Pacheco and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I would think it's probably going to be more Pacheco than Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So you got that stuff. Yeah, you always got the wild card and Jerick McKinnon in this offense. So that's kind of how you attack that, and you go with that. So with that, we actually got one game left, and that is our Monday night game next week against the Seahawks, and this is at the Giants. So this is an interesting one. Two teams that kind of feel similar, where you have two quarterbacks that are kind of good, kind of not. But then the main thing you got with the Giants is that you have no Saquon Barkley. So when you look at how Seattle just played this past week against, I want to say, no, it's not Detroit. But Seattle played against, who was it? I am blanking on that game. Let me see who we got here. But it just, I don't know. Like, I think Seattle is doing better, getting more of DK Metcalf involved in this offense. You definitely see if Kenneth Walker is out there, he is truly a dominating force and can really overpower almost any defense that he goes up against. So pretty impressive what's going on there. But okay, they played against the Panthers and played a pretty tight game here. And we know there was more Adam Thielen involved in this game from Carolina. So that's kind of how they chose to attack that team. And when it comes to the Giants, if that's the case and you want to attack the inside, you want to attack the slot, then there has to be more Darren Waller getting involved. So you probably get more of that. Is that enough to beat the Seahawks? Man, I don't think so. And let's take a look at where this game is going to be played. Let me check. I want to say this game is at the Meadowlands. Yep. Yeah, it's at MetLife. So this game being at home, no Saquon Barkley. Seattle actually won the one Super Bowl they achieved in New York. Those Seahawks are going to that fan base is going to travel well. I like the Seahawks in this game. Yeah, I think this is a game that's going to go well for them. Just kind of continue that stable offense that the Seahawks bring. And that's that. Maybe it's another good Kenneth Walker game, but we'll see. So that's what we got out of here. That's every game for this week, and that's in the books. So we'll see see if our guy DJ Triggs has any picks from this week. He's fighting illness, so hopefully he's back with us next week. But some pretty tough stuff going on there. But yeah, so that's all of our games for the week. And then let's take a look at some free agents. So to me, clearly the biggest free agent of the week is clearly Devin Achane. If he is available in your league, probably a smaller kind of league. So we're talking like maybe 12 teams or less. Devin Achane should absolutely be owned. I'm kind of shocked that his situation kind of fell into place like this, because the only thing that basically held him back, he possibly could have even been the starter from day one, was his shoulder / labrum kind of injury. So it took him a few weeks to come back from that. But he did. And once he came back from it, he was pretty healthy. So like, he can run. I mean, man, his tape from Texas A&M is absolutely insane if you ever get a chance to check it out. So pretty cool stuff going on there. And let's check who else is out there. I mean, I know, especially for James, you got the Tank Dells of the world, but yeah, he's another guy too that had some injury in the preseason, but he's a guy that should never have ever been allowed to be picked up in almost any size of the leagues that you know of, because of just how explosive he is He had some excellent games in the preseason. Actually, it might have just been one, but whatever it is, like his practices, his games were just insane. There's no way that Tank Dell should be a free agent in your league, but if he is, you got to get that guy. I think probably one of the biggest names out there, a guy who actually played really well, but pretty much the only thing preventing him from having more production is just the guys ahead of him, and that is Josh Palmer of the LA Chargers. So he will be stepping in for Mike Williams. He will be playing outside, but he will be that third look. And the big thing from Josh Palmer is that it was kind of a shaky start to the majority of last season. And he had that great preseason, like you saw out of like a Tank Dell kind of a guy. But the problem with that is that Palmer was doing all of that with backup quarterbacks. He never was really establishing that chemistry with a Justin Herbert because he was just not a number one receiver at that time. So, plus he also had DeAndre Carter, who was part of that lineup as well. So he was kind of more of that speed demon threat. And that's kind of how they worked it there. But now that he had that chemistry at the end of last season with Justin Herbert, and now you have one of either Mike Williams or Keenan Allen going down. This time it is Mike Williams. I think Josh Palmer is an excellent pickup to fill in for that space. But just be smart about that. Even though he's going to be starting more and getting more volume, if you really think about it, he's probably going to be the fourth look, right? So your first look is going to be Keenan Allen. Your second look is possibly Quentin Johnson, but really it's going to be Gerald Everett. So after Gerald Everett, then it's Quentin Johnson outside. So you're going slot, outside. Outside again would be Josh Palmer. So you're really looking at him as your fourth option. So again, like he's still kind of relegated in terms of targets. Kind of weird there, but he's probably a good option that you can get for your team. I mean, kind of a stash and C kind of a player, I would think is Melvin Gordon. So Melvin Gordon is kind of splitting that time with Justice Hill. So there wasn't as much Gus Edwards in this game. But Melvin Gordon can absolutely still ball out, still play. Had a really nice end to that preseason with the Ravens. But like I said, against Cleveland, you cannot run the ball. So I just see zero success out of any of these Ravens running backs. If you need a running back, take him, but then stash him. Like, don't start him. It's not going to work. It's not going to be like a guy like a Devin A-Chain who you probably should have started last week, considering that Salvin Ahmed was already missing time, but it is what it is. But yeah, take him, leave him on your roster, and just take it from there. So you got that going on. And then for the fifth player, I don't know. I don't have too many ideas out there. I mean, especially I'm in a pretty deep league. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Yeah, Elijah Mitchell is a guy that I know is out there, especially in my league. And it's pretty wild seeing how good Christian McCaffrey is. But then again, it could be a way of maybe people are viewing Deebo Samuel as that pseudo handcuff to a Christian McCaffrey. But even looking at the way the Niners are operating now, especially the game that Deebo Samuel just played was more receiving, right? So you had way more receiving production out of Deebo Samuel last game than pretty much, all of what you saw last season. So last season, he was kind of more of a running back. There was talks that he did have an injury of some kind. What it is, I don't fully remember. But that was how he worked last season. This year, it's more of a true wide receiver, more of that complement to Brandon Ayuk. So if that's the case, then should Christian McCaffrey go down, then it absolutely is Elijah Mitchell. So again, everything we've talked about guys out there, that if there is a certain handcuff on a highly productive player that's drafted in like the first 2 rounds of your fantasy league, that handcuff absolutely needs to be owned. So I see Elijah Mitchell out there. He's a guy that I'm kind of shocked is still a free agent. But you got that going on. Yeah, I don't know. Using ESPN, a league that I've always been using, I really like if you go into research, if you're on the mobile version for your phone, or if you're on the desktop version, the main thing you're looking for is that plus minus button. So with that plus minus, you can kind of see the change in percent rostered and how guys are fluctuating. So again, too, like Anthony Richardson going down, now Gardner Minshew's back and that kind of stuff. So you got that. Like that's a good tool to use. Also, the last tool is really nice. So whoever that last week was, how those players scored can be very helpful moving forward. So already looking at this, bam, showing up right at the top of the list is Carolina players. So we're seeing more Andy Dalton, 24 points last week, pretty solid. DJ Shark, wow, that's impressive. That's a receiver not named Adam Thielen. So he's out there as well. So you got that going on. You have the other tight end outside of Gerald Everett and Donald Parham with the Chargers. Yeah, I don't know. Like that might happen, might not, but I just don't think the Raiders are that bad of an offense compared to the Vikings. I think the Vikings are just atrocious and they allow multiple options to go out there and score against them. So I don't like that as much. A Pharaoh Brown against the Dallas Cowboys, that might be a good matchup. That might be a guy you can go out there and get. But then another guy out there that's kind of interesting because we talked about how that Washington matchup can occur, and Olamide Zaccheaus. So if Washington is really going to be stout against a tight end, everything outside is going to be opened up. So whether it's AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, and then a slot guy, Olamide, but really he's not a slot guy. He's going to go deep. And he even did that when he was with the Falcons. He was in the slot, but man, he was that guy running go routes. He was going outside, going down hard down the flat, and that's how he worked it. So I like that guy a lot. Yeah, you see a Josh Palmer on this as well. Kind of is what it is. There's some Rondale Moore action going on with the Cardinals. I do want to say, too, when it comes to the 49ers, I do want to say you can actually throw against that team. Yeah, I know the Giants didn't. They have their problems, but even though like Josh Dobbs is that backup kind of quarterback with the Cardinals, that guy really doesn't have any fear. I mean, that guy's played for a handful of franchises. Um, he's incredibly smart. I mean, we know after his career, he's going to be a rocket engineer. So he just loves to play football and he loves to use his mind and he's going to attack defenses in the way that he sees fit. So I like that. Maybe you do go with a Rondale Moore out there, but it's kind of the way to work it. You can also always work off of how teams are against a certain position, how they rank. But then again, too, like you got to take that with a grain of salt and with a really wide magnifying glass. That's why I like to break down. Okay, is this the slot production going on with a receiving game, or is this the outside production going on with a receiving game? And maybe that's a tool that I build in the future that can really be helpful to people, especially in season. Seeing how those matchups occur, seeing how those offenses like to operate, and seeing how they attack with the running game as well. So that's a pretty useful tool. Like I like seeing it on ESPN, but then at the same time, like you have to be smart about it. You have to understand how do these teams like to attack opposing offenses from the defensive side of things. So that's where it gets a little interesting, and you don't always just trust the rank of a certain position because we all know the slot and the inside is different than working outside. It's just two different animals, two different things. And there's different ways you can go about that for your offense. So that's kind of what we're seeing here. Yeah, so that's all the picks we got for the day from the games and kind of the waiver targets you got out there. But yeah, I think the one to me that really kind of sticks out is an Olamide Zaccheaus. He's definitely a guy out there. Yeah, so if we look at this, he's probably my Bono player of the week here. knowing how you're going to try to do things against that Washington defense. So that's kind of what I like there. A very opportunistic matchup. Let me take a look real quick down these games just to see if there's anything that sticks out to me. Again, if you are playing any of the running backs from Baltimore, bench them all. I just don't like any of those matchups. I do like Evan Ingram and Christian Kirk against the Falcons. I think that's a great matchup. I really didn't like what people were saying with Christian Kirk week 1. Just never agree with that, especially for a guy who was the number 1 receiver for the Jaguars last season. So it was what it was, and his bona fide value spoke of that. He was right up there with Zay Jones. And then the Bills-Dolphins game. Probably, again, too, like if you have a Dalton Kincaid or a James Cook, I think they end up doing really well there. So you got that going on. Broncos-Bears. Yeah, I don't know. Like maybe it's a Javonte Williams kind of a game against Chicago. You might have that. Bengals, big time Derrick Henry. So this could be a Derrick Henry game. This could be a Tajay Spears kind of a game. Those are the things that I really see sticking out with the Bengals. I would also avoid the receivers outside, and possibly Cincinnati might even work Jamar Chase even more into the slot. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, you definitely might have to rethink if you have a Jamar Chase or if you have a T. Higgins, especially a T. Higgins. I think you're kind of in trouble in this game. And Joe Burrow owners, I mean, yeah, you're already fighting uphill, so it is what it is there. Yeah, so we got that. Seeing any other games that really stick out? Again, Alvin Kamara coming back against the Buccaneers. That might be the true bona fide player of the week, especially if you're playing in daily fantasy leagues. Man, I could totally see Alvin Kamara like doing his thing. I think that'd be pretty cool right there. So you got that, and that's kind of looking like it. Maybe a Tank Dell. Oh, again, a Zeke Elliott. And then anyone inside for the Chiefs, whether it's a Travis Kelce or a Sky Moore, you're looking pretty good there. Those are the guys that I would like to take for probably any kind of daily action. So yeah, just kind of take that advice, take those players, maybe make a list of them, and then just kind of like slot those players in, whether it's your fantasy lineup or a daily fantasy lineup, and make something happen out of it. So those are my options for the week. So yeah, just gonna look here, see if we got any more comments, see what's going on. So yeah, so that's it. So yeah, thanks again for everyone sticking around and all the comments. Definitely appreciate that. So yeah, again, you can catch us on all these socials you see down here. I'm gonna have more game breakdowns for every single game of this week, and you'll be able to see those all on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook. Yes, so we'll have all 4 of those. We're thinking about doing Twitter next week. Just a little more that would go into that, so I'm not totally ready for that. But that's what we got going on here. So we got that. And then again, too, be sure to come back here next week, Monday, next week, Tuesday, 7 o'clock Central. You got myself, Steve M3TR1CS, and your boy, DJ TRIGGS. And hopefully we're both here together next week. So we can kind of have more stuff, more fun stuff, more engaging content. Love having you guys chime in, whether it's James, Brett, or whoever. Just love seeing you guys chime in on our stuff. So really good stuff here, good engagement. Just love doing this for you guys. So yeah, that's everything we got going on here. So yeah, I'm Steve M3TR1CS, and that's no debate.